Girl,
And
I
then
went to bed. I thought that game was over.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you what you thought of the game, but if you fell
No,
asleep.
I woke up and I saw
maybe-
the highlights the next morning. And I said, what the hell?
Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia Jay, and I'm here with Ashley Nicole Moss.
Hello, everyone.
And Ashley, we have a lot to talk about today. The WNBA is in full playoff mode. We've seen some amazing games. There's been a lot of unexpected things that have been happening. It's been a wild playoffs, and we are here with another episode to talk all about them.
Yes, wild, maybe an understatement. But first, we got to do the regular schmegular, and that is to remind you all to follow us on all of our social media platforms and make sure you are subscribed, your notifications turned all the way up on YouTube so you don't miss an episode, an interview, a live stream, you name it. You will only know about it if you are subscribed and your notifications are turned up. But if you are somebody who needs their hands free because you like to listen to your podcast, no problem. Scan this QR code and we will pop up wherever you do get your podcast. We're on Spotify and we're on Apple. So look, there's no reason to not be tapped in with us right here at We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And what we need to talk about right now is the Fever versus the Aces. Now, we said going into this series, it was going to be two teams on kind of different ends of the spectrum, right? You have a Aces team that did not look good before the All-Star break and then flipped that switch and went on an incredible winning streak and allowed that momentum to take them into the postseason. And then you have the Fever, who, when it rains, it pours in Indiana, apparently, because it was raining injuries one after another. Obviously, we can say that the trajectory really started with Caitlin Clark, and it had been a downfall since then. But Indiana shocked everybody in game one and said, no, Caitlin, no problem. Why? Because Kelsey Mitchell said, I got this. Look, the series between the Fever and the Aces is tied. Yes, it is tied 1-1 with respective blowouts from each team. So just in different games. Indiana took game one, like I mentioned, in an absolutely insane Kelsey Mitchell performance. Career high of 34 points on 12 of 23 shooting. Most points by a WNBA player in first career semifinal game. And she's also the first Fever player to score 30 points in a playoff game since 2012. Now, in game two, the Aces fought back and ultimately timed the series. As we know now, Steph White is 0-3. Here's the interesting stat of this series, outside of what the players are doing individually, and we'll get into all of that in just a second. But the interesting stat here, maybe not so interesting if you are a Fever fan, is that Steph White is 0-3 as a head coach in a best of 5 series when winning a game one. So if you are someone who likes to think glass half full or glass half empty, this is up your alley, because you can see that as history's bound to repeat itself or the streak is meant to be broken. But wherever you lie, we are in for a hell of a series. Alicia, how do you feel? Like, a lot to discuss with this series here.
So many things to discuss. Now, I don't want to belittle the win by the Fever that they had, because they came in and they got that win. They absolutely
did her thing. Listen.
Yeah. Kelsey Mitchell had a historic night, obviously, and the team did prevail in that. However, I will say the Aces did not have a great game that game. They did not show up in the way that we have been seeing them in this winning streak or just down the stretch, however you want to say it. Even Coach Hammon afterwards, and I'm paraphrasing here, said, that's not Aces basketball and we ain't going to win if we keep playing like that. And that was a big paraphrase, but that's what she said. So not to belittle them at all, because they took care of business. A win is a win, and they did it in a great fashion. But then going into the game two of the series, you see the Aces coming in playing Aces basketball big time, and they also shut down Kelsey Mitchell in a way. I don't want to say shut down. She obviously did a little something, but she went from a historic night with, 34 points?
34 points, yeah.
To having 13. And so they knew that obviously going into that, she is a key to the game. She needed to be contained and shut down, and they did that with her. Another thing I like to say is Lexi Holt, she did step up in a lot of ways. She's actually been a key player for the Fever, in my opinion. If you just look at the season and then also in the playoffs, she had 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. But they literally contain Kelsey in the way that they needed to. I mean, and you saw what happened there. I mean, the score doesn't lie. In addition, though, what I would say is I was rather disappointed in the way that they used Aliyah Boston. They need to get that ball to her more. Aliyah is a key player on that team. I'm trying to see her stat line. I want to say she only had 10 points. She only had 10. And Aliyah Boston is a phenomenal player, one of the best in the league, an all-star. I mean, the list goes on and on for her. And she needs to be more effective. They need to make sure that she's more effective because it wasn't for, she just didn't have as many opportunities rather as she should have in that game. And so when you go into a game 3, knowing that they know how to play Kelsey Mitchell, they know how to get her, you really have to utilize all of the players that you have. And Aliyah Boston is a huge factor in this that they need to make sure that she gets her points moving forward.
Yeah, going back to what you said about the matchup initially about game 1, that is sometimes and I don't want to say that the Fever aren't good. This is just what the phrase is, everybody. Let me just start by saying that. Sometimes you don't have to be good, you just have to be lucky. And that really was up to the Fever to take the reins of their luck. And that was, you're on the road, not playing a team that's not having a good game. You got to steal that. You got to take that opportunity and hope you can take that and turn that into a trajectory of a swing, right? I kind of equate it to, look, everyone knows I'm a diehard Knicks fan. The Knicks were facing the Boston Celtics this last playoff run. We all know that the Celtics love to shoot three-pointers. They were not shooting well from the 3 that entire series. The Knicks took advantage of that and ultimately won that series on the strength of the fact that, yes, we did what we had to do, but it also helps when you're going into a team that's not playing characteristically like themselves. And I think the Fever did a fantastic job of just taking that and making it beneficial to them. Now, to the point, though, is if the Aces did awake from that game 1 and you've awoken the beast in a sense, now you have to figure out how to attack the real Las Vegas Aces. Not to say that what we saw in game 1 wasn't a way that they can play again, but one thing I did say when we gave our predictions was I have a hard time believing that this is an Aces team that will allow this to go 5 games because of what we saw in game 1. There's nothing worse than playing a team that doesn't, not that they don't belong here in the semifinals, but maybe it was improbable for them to get this far because of everything stacked against them. That's the most dangerous kind of team to play in a 5-game or a 7-game series and to allow it to go to the breaking point, because it's like, all right, we got nothing to lose. Like, if we're going out swinging, and you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. So I believe that the Aces that showed up in game 2 will be and should be, let me say that too, should be the Aces that we see the remainder of the series, because if it is not, and you give this Fever team an inch, like I said last show, they are going to take a mile, as we saw in game 1.
Right. It's almost like they took that advice or the sound bite that we had or whatever.
Not the show. They watched the show, Alicia. Come on now.
Okay. They took it in that game too. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe not the game 1. There was a lot of factors in that game 1 too. A'ja Wilson just got her 4th MVP. There was a lot of things that were happening in and around that.
A lot of physicality too in this series too, which makes a difference in how you play, what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things, but like you said, and I could not agree more, the Aces we saw in game 2 are the Aces that are going to stay there. Like Coach Hammon, she's not.
We hope.
Well, we hope, but if
you give them an inch, they're gonna creep in there.
Yeah, they went. When I interviewed A'ja Wilson, she talked about how they did scouting reports and went back and really retooled a bunch of things and got in there. And I know that's what they had to do between that first game and that second game, because you saw the results. You saw them systematically, play the game that they have, be the Aces, and then also at the same time, in a lot of ways, dismantle what the Fever had. And so they're definitely going to continue to do that. Another thing that we saw that you've mentioned is the physicality of the game. I'm going to be honest. When I was watching it, I didn't really think, I just thought, yo, they're in the playoffs. Like, I'm playing like that, period. And we're like, and I understand that what we're going to talk about right now with the physicality and Becky Hammon in her comments afterwards, and Steph White also had some comments, and I'll read them. But I was just thinking it was just some really good playoff basketball. That's just me. But as we have seen throughout the whole season, it is an issue. There are things that cannot be denied. And Becky Hammon blasted the officiating afterwards, saying physicality is out of control. I mean, you can't bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for a whole half. You put two hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying we're not fouling too. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's out of control. Most of my assistants come from the NBA, and they're like, this level of physicality would not fly in the NBA. There would be fights. Okay. And then Steph White also talked about the officiating and said it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it really is. When they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's the challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. So, Ashley, what are your thoughts? Because I mean, like I said, I just felt like it was playoff basketball, but we have seen that it has been an ongoing thing.
I'm in the middle. I tend to think that when you get to the playoffs, you should allow a different level of physicality. Going back to the Knicks, like in that series against Detroit, it was an extremely physical series, to the point where people were talking about it reminded them of the 90s. Like, they were getting away with a lot, right? But I think the issue comes where the whistle doesn't get blown both ways. And that's where that physicality then becomes highlighted, because if both teams are physical and both teams are getting the same type of calls and both teams are allowed to play at the same level of physicality, then there's not really much room to complain, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like, it's getting called the same way. I think that there were inconsistencies in the officiating, and that's where it's frustrating depending on what side you fall on in the series or in this particular game. I think that playoff basketball should be physical. I think playoff basketball should be officiated in a different way than regular season basketball. You don't get this far just to get this far. And I think it does a disservice to what the playoffs represent to not allow a certain level of physicality. But there should be things that are just no's across the board. And there should be consistency in how the ref blows their whistle. And I think that's the biggest thing. I feel like in a lot of playoff sports, playoff basketball specifically, that people have the biggest issue with is that the whistle does not get blown the same way. And then it kind of looks like one team's beating up on the other. And that's where the conversation starts to get sticky. But I have no issue with the physicality. Just call the whistle the same on both sides. That's kind of where I fall in it.
Would you agree with Coach when she said, Coach White said that actually, it wasn't Coach White. Would you agree with Coach Hammon saying that her assistants are from the NBA, and they said that, this level of physicality would never get away with it? Was it?
To a degree, yeah.
Who said that?
Coach Becky said that.
Coach Becky, yeah.
To a degree, right? I think that some teams are allowed to play more physical than others. And that's the conversation that we constantly have in the NBA too. It's just like, for example, the Knicks get beat up on a lot and there's not a lot of whistles and stuff called for them. But with the Lakers, there's a lot of stuff that you can't do to them because it's LeBron. There is an inconsistency with the whistle. One thing I think that the league is trying to do, specifically when you get into the postseason, is allow more physical style of play, because again, I think that's what the playoffs represent. So to Coach Becky's point, she's not wrong, but I just think that in order to grow the game and in order to excite new fans from watching it, or to bring new fans in and they're excited to watch it, especially as this league continues to grow with all the expansion teams, I do think that there should be a celebration of physicality, especially in the postseason. I just think that in order to do that, the officiating needs to be more even keeled. But I don't think that we should be anti physicality. I think honestly, that's what makes playoff basketball different than regular season basketball. And I think that's what makes the sport exciting to watch. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we all want, is to grow this game. And in order to grow it, you have to allow certain things to be different than maybe they've been in the past. But to Coach Becky's point, there are some things that are egregious and should constantly be called. But overall, physicality, I'm with you. Like, that's playoff basketball to me. Like, squabble up. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. Don't squabble up, but you know what I mean. Like,
Right. Well, somebody that certainly was squabbling it up was Phoenix, because let me tell you about this game that they had against Minnesota. Number one, they were down by 20 points at one point, Ashley. 20 points.
Girl,
And
I
then
went to bed. I thought that game was over.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you what you thought of the game, but you fell
No,
asleep.
I woke up and I saw the highlights the next morning. And I said, what the hell?
Right. It was definitely one of those ones, you know, when you go to sporting events and people leave early and you're like, why are you leaving early? This was one of the ones where you'd be mad if you left early because they were down 20 points. Yeah. Everyone, you know, people were thinking it was over, but definitely the people that didn't was everyone on that Phoenix team, because they came back and they pushed it to overtime. So, and then once they got into that overtime, they took control and they beat the Lynx. So now the series also sits at 1-1. You know, when you look at this win that they had, is Minnesota in danger, Ashley?
I mean, you blow a 20-point lead. I guess it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Would you rather be the one blowing a 20-point lead, or would you rather be the one getting beaten by 20? Like, that's kind of like the game here, right? Blowing a 20-point lead for me is worse than getting beat by 20. Because like you said, like, people have bad games. You have games that are uncharacteristic. There's a lot of factors that go into sometimes like just having an off night, right? But to be on your P's and Q's to the point that you have a 20-point lead on a team, and to be so just negligent in how you're playing that you allow them to come back, not only come back, but force the game into overtime. To me, I gotta say, like, to lose like that, if I'm Minnesota, I'm in that film room, what the hell went wrong and how do we not allow this to happen again? Because that would be extremely, you get a win like that against a team like Minnesota and you're the Mercury and you just took down the reigning champs, like, you feel pretty damn good going into game 3. Like, you feel Teflon. Like, you feel like, oh, you want to rumble? We can rumble. Like,
yeah, and certainly the Lynx are, you know, have been kind of all season the front runners for the championship, right? And for them to lose a 20-point, I don't care what team you're playing, for you to lose a 20-point lead. And also, I hate to say this because you can't always tell from the outside looking in, so I cannot say what the players on the Lynx were feeling, but it didn't look like the fight was a fight for a championship or a game that was leading to a championship.
You had a 20-point lead. You thought you were good. You were coasting. You were chilling.
I don't care. There's a point in time when you lose all them points and you see that we're in single digits or whatever, that you start fighting. Because I agree with that. And I can't, and I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm just saying from watching the game, I really wanted to compel them to do it even more. Like, I was like, you guys, literally, you're going to give up a game in the playoffs like this when you're up by 20? Like, yes, you were at the top of the standings. Yes, you were a favorite to win, but you can't give up a 20-point lead like that and feel good about the future moving forward.
There's two things going to happen in this scenario, right? It's going to light a fire. It's going to give the Mercury a rose-colored glasses effect, right? Where it's like, now you're looking at yourself and you're looking at this team in a brand new light. Like, you on a cloud, you going in there and you're like, oh, now you gotta dance with us, right? Like, we're the team to beat in this series. Like, now we feeling good. Or Minnesota, that was a wake-up call from hell for Minnesota. And it's like, yo, we're not going out like this. Like, you saw what just happened to the Liberty. And again, they were injured and there were other factors, but like, you're trying to get back to that position so you can hopefully claim a championship that you fell short of last season. And you're going to allow someone to come back from 20 and bring it into overtime and get a dub on you. Like, if they were not in that locker room, respectfully, as teammates, cussing each other out, like, what the hell just happened? Y'all don't want it bad enough. That's my philosophy. Because I can tell you right now, if I'm on Minnesota and that's how that game ended, I'm in that locker room after the game. I'm raising hell. Like, nobody's going home until we figure out how the hell we prevent this from happening next game. Because that was crazy. Crazy.
It was. And Coach Reeves, she said that they ripped the game from us. So she probably said some expletives behind the closed doors, but that's what she said it. They did rip the game from, period. So you need to do something to get that control back and to get it back. But let me tell you who is doing something. And they aren't playing about their team. And that is Phoenix, because the Jonas Brothers were supposed to have a concert in their arena.
I haven't heard it forever.
Listen, I know. I was kind of like, they still touring? But
I didn't even know they were still
don't come for me, Jonas fans. Jonas Brothers fans.
I didn't even know they were still a band.
Yeah, but apparently they are. And they were having a concert, at the arena. And they said, nah, Jonas Brothers, you got to move because we got a playoff game. So respect. And also, I just want to say it can be done. They're showing us that it can be done. So anybody who's saying that we can't move something for a WNBA team, like a tennis cup or whatever the case may be, it's possible.
We've done it in the NBA. I remember it was 2023. And the Hawks forced the game 6 against the Boston Celtics. Like, it was unexpected. It was like everyone thought the Celtics were going to sweep them. The series would be over in 5. They forced a game 6, and they had to reschedule the Janet Jackson concert. And I remember Trae Young doing the post game, and they were like, "I'm so sorry, Janet, but the series isn't over. My mom is so mad at me. She loves Janet." Like, it can happen, and it's happened before. Like, this is not the first time this has happened. It's happened in the NBA. So everyone chill the hell out. That's Janet Jackson. No shade to the Janet brothers. No shade to the Jonas Brothers, but it's like they rescheduled Janet freaking Jackson. Like, everyone will be all right. Like.
But also, the thing that I don't understand about all of this is, if you have a sports team and they're in the playoffs, or you aspire to be in the playoffs at all, which at the beginning of the season, you should always aspire, you block all those dates off. You just block them off to game 7. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you block them off.
Like, I think that also, like, the arena's a business at the end of the day. I feel like and also those tours are set so far in advance in comparison to series. Like, you would need a crystal ball. But to your point, like, it happens. Reschedule it. Go to the next city if you're the Jonas Brothers. Come back on the tail. Like, it's not impossible to do. Like, I understand trying to fill out the calendar for the arena in advance, and I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. But pivot and adjust. Like, all right, so Phoenix is going to have to wait a couple extra days to see the Jonas Brothers. Everyone will live. Everyone can take a deep breath. They're not going anywhere. I didn't even know they were still a band. So look, I'm behind the 8 ball here.
You just gonna have your little Jonas Brothers. I don't want to call it little. Let me take that back, because they're gonna come for me. But you just gonna have your concert a day later. It's gonna be fun.
Listen, if they can reschedule Janet freaking Jackson, all right, the Jonas Brothers can wait. Okay,
and that's on that.
All right, period. Okay, everyone. So now it is time for our favorite segment of the show, and that is the AT&T Guarantee of the Week. So this week we're highlighting something that we have alluded to a lot of the time on this podcast. We've had smaller conversations about the representation or lack thereof in the WNBA when it comes to front offices and coaching staffs. And we're going to have a more in-depth conversation about that right here. So this week we're talking about the decreasing number of women coaches in the WNBA, which is a very worrying statistic. Obviously, when you talk about a league that is women, filled with women of all different shapes, sizes, creeds, walks of life. But the unifying factor is they're all women. And to have that not represented in the coaching staff is alarming. It's concerning. And honestly, we believe that the WNBA deserves better. So just want to give you guys some quick statistics that you may or may not be aware of. So Right now, after Noelle Quinn's firing, the number of Black women in the WNBA as coaches is now 0. So, not a single minority Black head coach. Not a single Black head coach in the WNBA. As we know, it seems as though that women are given shorter leashes. We can point to Teresa Witherspoon specifically in Chicago. A bigger statistic here to just kind of put this into perspective: 75% of the playoff teams this season coached by women. 80% of those teams missed the playoffs coached by men. So it is not representative of the work, the quality of work, the success of the organization, which makes this an even more confusing and just perplexing conversation because it's not based on results. Um, as we know, we just talked about Coach Sandy getting fired from the New York Liberty, which took everybody by surprise, myself included. We're talking about a coach who is a season removed from winning a championship, not just a championship, the first championship in New York Liberty history. So, a historic championship. Cheryl Reeve actually spoke on that firing, and she said, I think Sandy is a heck of a coach. And I think Sandy will land on her feet like she always does. And I'm absolutely thrilled, if I'm Seattle, Toronto, and Portland, that I was just gifted a championship level coach. Becky Hammon also had this to say about the firing. If you know you have a good coach, keep a good coach. And that doesn't mean that you win every year. There can be rough years in between, but you continue to stay competitive and you invest in what you have. You invest in your leadership. It happens all the time in professional sports, but it's really hard to rip up a foundation, just start over and over every year or every 2 years. It's hard to reboot every year. I know it seems like the coach is the easiest thing to remove, but if you've got a good coach, you keep him or her. Again, the league is 80% women. I'm sorry, excuse me. 80% of the women in the league are Black. So 80% of the WNBA are Black women, and there are currently 0 head coaches who represent that, as there are 0 head coaches who are Black in the WNBA. I could not agree more with Becky's statement. I feel like this across the board in coaching. I don't know why it has become this trend in professional sports that if something doesn't work, it's the coach's fault. If the team doesn't win, it's the coach's fault. Now, there are instances where I do think the coach is the piece that has to be changed, but I don't know if you can make that decision in a season when there are a lot of other factors. Let's talk about Teresa Witherspoon. That wasn't her issue. The team's not built to win right now. The team is a developmental team. It was always going to be a work in progress. There's a lot more that the front office could do to make that a more competitive, winning team. And I just feel like the coach is always the scapegoat, and it's just not fair because, to Coach Becky's point, and I feel like this even in the NBA, you can't keep changing a coach and expecting the team to win. You're messing with the chemistry, the foundation. You're messing with interpersonal relationships between the player and the coach, and expecting someone to come in and take what is not winnable and be this magician and make it work. It's not how it works. Again, I do believe that coaches should have um an expiration date. And what I mean by that is, you can't give a coach 10 years and think, and they're not winning, they're not winning, they're not winning. And it's like, oh, another, like, you should have a cutoff point. But the firing of Coach Sandy blew my mind because this is a coach that won a championship last season. We're not talking about someone who hasn't won in 10 plus years. They had a parade in Brooklyn last summer. So for me, like, if you're not allowed to have a down year based on situations outside of your control, let's talk about it. Like, the team was injured. The team injury is a huge part of what makes winning a championship possible. Phil Jackson said it best. It's part skill, part luck, and the luck is staying healthy. How unless she gives up her limbs to the players, so that's like, what do you want her to do? I just think that the scapegoating of coaches across the board is just so unfair, and it makes these jobs just not desirable for people who I think are qualified. Because if you can't function, imagine going to work every day and being on the verge of getting fired every single day. Like, you can't function like that.
Well, and Ashley, what is staggering about Brondello is that literally at the current moment, because we are in the playoffs, they are the champions. They fired her and they're literally the champions right now. So for a coach to lead her team to the first championship that the franchise has ever had, take them back to the playoffs
Say that part again. That they've ever had.
Take them again to the playoffs, right? Despite everything that they went through this season. And then to fire her the moment that their season is done is egregious. If you look at, you also talked about.
Then you want to hike the prices for season tickets. Let's not even talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's another segment. Write that down, Emma. Write that down because we need to talk about that. But when you look at, you talked about Teaspoon. She had a better record than the current coach, who is a male, Tyler Marsh, had a better record than he did this year, and they re-upped his contract with haste. My thing is, why, if you look, and that's just one example, if you look at it across the board, are men given more chances than women are in this league?
Yes.
It makes absolutely no sense.
Men are given more chances in the world, though, so I'm not surprised that it would trickle down to the WNBA, if we're going to be honest. Like, y'all not ready to have that conversation, though, but like, if we're going to be real, that's what it is.
Talk about it. But also, when we talk about not giving coaches, I don't care if you're a man or a woman or identify in any other way, regardless, it is a bad business model to hire a coach and only give them a little bit of time to do something with nothing, you know? And I'm not even talking about, yes, there are some fantastic players on the New York Liberty squad. And yes, there were some things that were questionable with the coaching, but all coaches have things that are questionable, number one. And number two, there were so many obstacles and things that happened on that team that she had absolutely no control of over a coach, right? Mm-hmm. But then you have teams that have full squads. They're operating in a place where they could have had a better record even. I'm not even talking about making to the playoffs, but a better record. And you still give them the benefit of the doubt, but you don't do it for a woman. That makes absolutely no sense.
And what's crazier to me, Alicia, is that it's so circumstantial at times, right? Because look at the Aces, for example. The Aces didn't fire Coach Becky by the All-Star break because the Aces looked like crap. Like, they let her figure out, how do we turn this season? That is my job as the head coach. Like, I've delivered you multiple championships. We're not having a good season. Let me figure out what to do with my team. And even if she hadn't figured it out, even if the team hadn't figured it out and they didn't go on the winning streak and they didn't enter the playoffs, you don't fire a coach who has given you multiple championships. The fact that Coach Sandy is no longer the head coach of the New York Liberty because they didn't go back to the finals when the team was 75% injured. It's not like she blew a lead and in a critical series and made questionable adjustments and things like, even that, like, I think you give someone grace, especially if they won you your first championship ever. We're talking about they fell short where multiple star players and supporting cast players had multiple different types of injuries. Like, I don't know what you want someone to do in that situation. And it just seems that, like I feel in the real world, men get the benefit of being mediocre and they get all the grace in the world. But women, specifically Black women, minority women, have to be twice as good to get a fraction of that grace. And it's unfair. And I know people want to say life's not fair, whatever. This is a results business. And the fact that the results can even still be there on paper and it's still not enough for you to keep your job. Goes back to my point of, you want good coaches. You want coaches who know how to win. You want coaches who are player-friendly coaches. Why would anybody want to take a job where they're constantly on the chopping block if they don't happen to win a game or if they don't have a winning season? Like, it's just a bad business model from so many different aspects. And in a league that's predominantly Black women and in a league that's all women, to not have any Black women representing these franchises is atrocious to me. And it's just such a disservice to, I think, what this league represents. And it's just not, it's not clicking. I'm not feeling it. It's something not,
No,
that is there.
not feeling it at all. And it's definitely something that we're going to be talking about again, because it's not something that is going to go away and something that needs to change. So we'll definitely be keeping this conversation going as we go. But right now, Ashley, there are some other stories that we really need to touch on. It's kind of like we're going to do a segment where we do some quick hitters so that we can get in as many as we can before we end the show. Let's just talk first. Kara Lawson was selected as the Team USA coach. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on it?
I'm excited. I'm interested. Taking over for Cheryl Reeve, obviously. Not a stranger to the Olympics, was an assistant in 2020, like the last Olympics, 2024. So I'm excited to see, her get her head coaching opportunity. I think it's going to be even cooler that it's home here in America, in LA. And I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited. Again, no strangers to the Olympics. So I feel like if anyone was going to take over for Cheryl Reeve, this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I don't know if you caught any of, it wasn't an acceptance speech, but it was just a speech about her being in the role. And she had some amazing words to say about the people who came, or the women who came before her that coached the people that inspired her to be doing what she's doing. And also she was chosen by Sue Bird, who was named the first managing director of the USA basketball women's national team in May. And so Bird is choosing both coaches and the players. I'm sure there's a bunch of people doing it, but she's definitely instrumental in that process. So really cool to see that she was chosen for that. And look, I'm really excited to see what she does as a coach. Another thing that we definitely need to talk about is the Los Angeles Sparks. They have a new facility. They announced it today. The team is definitely leveling up, okay? $150 million practice facility. And they were naming all the things that they were having. My personal favorite.
It looks nice. Like, I want to move in.
No, that's Ashley. How did you take the words out of my mouth? Because I was going to say, I'm trying to move in. There was views of the ocean.
They got a
dedicated nap rooms, like a dedicated nap room. Are you kidding me?
No, it is nice.
No, it's really nice. I'm like, they got to have an apartment in there.
Take your reservations for like long-term stays, because a hydrotherapy room.
Yes. Listen, clock it for sure. I could definitely work from there. That's for sure. You're gonna see. Look, you're gonna see Ashley and I like in the podcast room podcasting from there.
I think the craziest thing though is $150 million, the largest investment to date in the history of women's sports. Which is, they have the money in LA. But I just think that the ownership group of the Sparks is just doing right. And I think that obviously not every organization has the funds to do something at this scale. Everything's relative. But when you're in a major market like New York, like LA, there's no reason I feel like that you shouldn't have these type of facilities for your sports teams. You have the money. You do very well from a marketing standpoint. You do very well from a television standpoint. There are just some organizations that should not cut corners when it comes to what they're able to provide their athletes. And I'm glad that the Sparks did not try to do that. This is a whole lot of cash.
Yeah, a whole lot of cash. And what I like about it is when one team does it, it almost kind of builds a competition of ways. And not that it should take that, but hey, by any means necessary, like let's get these dedicated facilities for every single team, whether they be 150 million or whether they just be what the team can do. Just having something dedicated to them is so important. We've heard the stories of the facilities. I won't name any names, but you know who you are. And They definitely, every single team needs to do something like this. Maybe not on the $150 million scale, but I hope this inspires them all. You know
To
who you
put
are.
that into perspective for everyone who's kind of keeping score, recent facilities that were announced, $78 million for the Indiana Fever for their new facility that is going to be built. The Liberty, $80 million. The Sky, $38 million. And the Storm, $64 million. So this is a little bit above those.
Just a tiny bit, but also you have to, it's in California, it's on prime real estate. Like there's a whole bunch of things that would contribute to the 150, but also it just sounds like it's going to be really nice.
No,
Now
I'm still on the panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean, bro. That's crazy.
Panoramic
You ever watch
views.
Zoe 101?
No.
Okay, so there was this show on Nickelodeon back in the day. Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney Spears' little sister, was on the show, and they went to this like fake college, but it had panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean. And I used to always say, like, PCA, shout out to Emma. She knows what I'm talking about. And I was like, I want to go to this school. That's what this reminded me of. Like, the views are insane, like insane.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to
traded from that team now.
I'm definitely gonna have to go look up that show, Ashley, because today was the first day I've ever heard. I was today years old.
What?
I don't know. It didn't make it to Beaverton, Oregon. Apparently, it didn't make it to Beaverton, Oregon. But some definitely exciting news coming out of the Sparks, and something that was exciting for A'ja Wilson is that she won her 4th MVP, which is just insane when you think about it, especially at her age. I saw this graphic of all of her like trophies and accolades around her, and I was just like, and she's just getting started. But it did start a lot of conversation within social. You know how it goes when something like that drops. People were a little surprised that Napheesa Collier didn't get at least more votes for the MVP. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, but you know what? I also think that this is just kind of like one of the things that I feel like is a fault in the system when it comes to voting, right? Because it's humans are voting. It's not like it's a machine, an algorithm. I think that sometimes people get so focused on how a season ends for a player and they don't look at the totality of a season. And I know that's a critique that I've had when it comes to MVP voting, even in the NBA, is people are very, what have you done for me lately? I think Fee's time missed with injury may have shifted some people's perspective on her winning the award, and also because the Lynx were able to still win without her. Whereas when you look at the situation with the Aces, yes, they started off really bad before the All-Star break, but ultimately what led to that historic run and then being in the postseason was A'ja's, dominance as a force, right? So I think people were looking at it from a second half perspective versus a totality perspective. And I personally think that is the fault in MVP voting. I don't know, and this is not just in this scenario, I think about this across the board. People just don't really have long-term memories. They don't look at the entirety of a season. And I think that's probably where Fee kind of got the short end of the stick when it came to voting.
Yeah, I think people's reaction to just the amount of votes that she received, I think they underestimated the impact of how long she was out and how many people weighed that in their voting.
Right.
Because I personally obviously don't get to vote, but if I were to vote, it would
we got to get to a vote. That's what we need to work on.
Yeah. I do. I would love to vote, but also at the same time, it is a hard thing when you're looking at the caliber of players that both, Napheesa and A'ja are. And I would have voted for A'ja too, just if you look at the total impact of what she's done, not only on the team, but in the league, right? Like it's an MVP of the entire league. So it's, I just think that the thing that weighed the most for people was her being out in the number. And that actually, I think, could be looked at overall when it comes to MVP, like how much of the season can you miss and still be in the conversation?
Yeah.
That's just something to look at too. But just congratulations to A'ja Wilson. Just historic on every single level. And it was fun to see like her dad in the pink wig. I don't know if you saw that, but he was like rocking the pink wig when he was there to, give her award. So historic for her. And she's, like I said, she's just getting started. I personally think we're witnessing the best women's basketball player, especially right now. We are definitely seeing her greatness, and it's something that I feel like it's a privilege to watch. So congratulations to you, Asia. And, we're going to see who's going to be that MVP of the playoffs as we keep watching the WNBA playoffs and talking all about the playoffs right here. Make sure that you're locked in on all levels, whether it be on social, subscribe, do all the things, because you're not going to get these extra shows that we're putting out. We're recording all the time. We want to make sure you get all of the info on the WNBA playoffs. So make sure that you're locked in. We're going to have a QR code at the end of this episode that will get you right there to everything that you need so that you can be locked in right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.
Bye, guys.